welcome to Top Deck Heroes. We have an extra special show planned tonight. As you can tell, we've got some extra special guests. But let's go through our mediocre guys first. Kevin Broberg in the bottom left-hand corner. He hasn't won anything lately. He doesn't matter.
The most mediocre. Wait.
Jesse Cervini and myself, who I've also haven't won anything lately. Semi-regular occurrence here. We've got Timmy Two Belts, your reigning, defending, undisputed world heavyweight champion. Hello, Tim.
And in last place in the fantasy draft currently.
Yes. It is going badly.
And tonight's an international affair. We have your reigning, defending, United Kingdom team champion, the king of Muscle Mountain, Rio Gopal. Hello.
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Hope you all had a good Christmas.
I think I did. Santa brought me everything I wanted. Do y'all get Santa Claus over in England?
Yeah. And he gave us a barbell and some weight. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice.
There we go.
All right, so tonight's extra special edition of Top Deck Heroes, we have a little bit of news to start the top of the hour. And because it is British news, we'll let Rio Gopal talk about it.
All right. So, 19th and the 20th of January is the UK Cup. A lot of people are going to be coming to that. I know Garrett's going to try and come over to that. The prize support and the information for that has been posted on the UK UFS Players page. It all looks really good. We've got our own embroidered mat, which is the full art version of
Hurricane of Death.
Hurricane of Death. Yeah, and it's got 2019 UK Cup along the bottom and everything. It looks really good. Yeah.
Now, is the UK Cup a series or just a standalone event?
I believe it's going to be a series. From what I've been told by the person running the event, Oliver Hill, he told me that it's going to be a trophy. That was the original idea, that it was going to be a trophy. I don't know if that's going to be a part of it anymore, but it's going to be an ongoing thing. Yeah, I believe so. Because we used to have Pro Tour championships, but they stopped after a while. So this is a good, this is a breath of fresh air. We're getting them back, and we get some competitive UFS in outside of cardboard events.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I can't wait to see all the decks that come out of that, because I've seen some of the Scottish events going up, and just some little glimpses into the metagame, and it's exciting to see what's going to come out.
Yeah, so if you are in England or nearby, hop on the tube or the train or pile into a lorry if you have to get to the UK Cup. For the remainder of the show, Kevin Broberg is going to be taking over. He's our regular commissioner of the UFS
That's
draft. Right. He decided to run our year-end review show because he thinks the ones I run are a giant mess.
Yeah, so I tried to kind of... I'm happy to get everyone together today here, and I kind of give the other hosts kind of three broad topics to talk about. Just kind of organize, because a lot of stuff happened this year, and a lot of the game is very broad and whatever. And the kind of the three big topics, and you guys are welcome to subdivide these, and if you want to give ratings that fit within these. I want to talk about collectability, play experience, and Jasco PR and communications. So for collectability, the big picture there is to kind of, we're playing with collectibles. We're playing with intellectual property. We're playing with, lots of set releases this year. How do you feel about those? Do you feel like sort of the flavor of the cards came through? If you're a big Mortal Kombat or Cowboy Bebop or whatever fan, did the characters feel good, or feel true to who they were, or were they just kind of tacked on mechanics on whatever? For the play experience, that's probably going to be the thing we talk about the most, I have to imagine, because that's kind of what's it been like to play UFS this year? What's the tournament experience like? What's the deck building experience like? How are the actual games themselves once you sit down to play? All that kind of stuff. How are how do they manage bans? How do they do all that's set rotations even? And then Jasco PR kind of, I guess, overlapping a little bit there as far as what Jasco was actually doing, how you felt they managed the community and the expectations. How do you feel that did you find out about things when they wanted you to, or when they kind of were there a lot of unexpected surprises or whatever. How did you feel about Jasco Games' work this year to connect you with UFS? So I mean, let's start at the top with collectability. Somebody far away with a grade.
Alrighty, so I'll talk a little bit about collectability this year. One of the things, Kevin and I went to one of our favorite restaurants over the weekend. It was called Beef Eaters, and down in Bradford. And over some prime rib, we were talking about collectability. And, I was talking about too many sets, too few sets. And what we really ended up breaking down into was how well did Jasco leverage their licenses this year? And I think it was a great year with Cowboy Bebop, Mortal Kombat, and was there a new license other than that?
Well, Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers.
It's Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers. Yeah, so I think the first two were really good for leveraging their licenses. The last one I think is a little disappointment. We got more of something that we already had, especially knowing that Soul Calibur is coming up here real soon. And I think that coupled with the fact that I was expecting Street Fighters versus Darkstalkers last season, I think kind of made it feel like a little bit of a letdown at the end. That's just my thought on it, but I think overall, as far as leveraging their licensing goes, I'm going to give them a B+ this year. I'd like to see them maybe do more one-shots, get as many new licenses in here as possible. But that's how I feel about collectability. B+. I think the last set was also a little disappointing because it was so small. I would have liked there had been more cards in it to actually collect instead of getting all of my cards super duper fast.
Jesse, I love the facial expressions you're making here. Why don't you go next?
Okay, so let's talk about collectability. Two sets were obviously designed to introduce to get one. They are a strong property that's introducing new players. Both being Mortal Kombat being never seen it before, Cowboy Bebop, it's our first anime property. They both presented themselves in a collectability matter of you want everything from them. You want to have everything. You have the Mortal Kombat fanboys who want every card from it just because, and same with Cowboy Bebop. There's Cowboy Bebop who don't even play the game who want all the stuff because it's Cowboy Bebop. Yeah. But the cards are great. The overall value of playability of the cards from both sets was really strong.
Power cash grab.
Thank you, Sean. I will agree with Sean that the last set of the season was definitely smaller, easier to obtain everything, and it didn't have that same pizzazz that you got from the other two sets. Maybe because a lot of them are either characters we've already seen and just upgraded versions of previously released characters, or they were more. This was more of a filler. Not saying filler because it
was
made
a filler
some.
Set, I agree.
It's not a filler set though. It was more of a fill in the blank set. That's what I see it as. Where a lot of characters got a lot better because it filled in blanks that they needed, on top of producing a new character to play with that style. Case in point, Ken 2 support, Existence to Eva 2.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because there's also Lord Raptor fitting into the kind of the air symbol flash kit that really hadn't done anything competitively, but now I think has a lot more legs to work with.
I mean, look at Gyro. Look at what Akuma did to Gyro Man support. Admission fees are considered playable, and the same with Gyro Attack and his Wiener version. It's cool. All these attacks have some playability because of the new character they work with.
Yeah. So Jesse, can I interrupt you? So what do you think your grade is on this one, for collectability overall for 2018? These 3-set releases.
I'm going to give it an A. Personally, I think they did a great job. If this is the 3-set system we're expecting going, at 3 sets, this is what I'm expecting on a yearly basis. Is 2 sets that are going to be a high level collectability, 1 set that fills in the blanks to even out the format and just fill in those, decks that need a few holes. That's what I want to see. Well thought out, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, this might be a fluke year, and we'll come back to this next year and be like, yeah, they completely screwed up the system. They had it right already. We'll find out 1 year from now.
Ria, why don't you go next?
I think collectability was really good this year, actually. It was the first for many things. You know, it was the first anime universe. It was the first crossover set to come to the game. It was the first Mortal Kombat set. And Mortal Kombat was something that we all thought was a pipe dream back when we used to play. We used to be like, oh yeah, you know, how good would it be if we actually got Mortal Kombat? And now we have it. It's another one to tick off the list, you know. And I think starter decks, especially with these sets that people were really buzzing about, really up their game. I like the starter decks from both Bebop and Mortal Kombat. I think they're really good at getting people into the game, and I'm just really pleased with them because I see so many people come in the store and they pick up them. You know, they may not go spend out a bunch of boosters straight away, but they'll pick up the, you know, if they understand that there's Mortal Kombat stuff in and they haven't seen that before, or Bebop stuff, they'll be more inclined to pick that up. And I think with terms of you know, flexibility of how the flavour of the cards were, it was really good. Goro was 4-hand size. You know, everyone used to joke about that. He is. He's this big monster of the format. He's the biggest, you know, in standard now. Quan copied people, Quan Chi. Liu Kang with combos, and you know, it felt like they represented who they are in the fighting game. And the last point I was going to make was that a lot of new cards that have come up in the Street Fighter vs. Darkstalkers set are kind of tipping the hat to older cards. If you look at Thunder Break, and then you look at Darkness Flow, or you look at something like Iraspinter, and you look at Sangu Sacrifice, you know, I think it's really cool. But then there's that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to, I agree with a lot of things you just said in there. If you had to boil it down to just a letter grade, where would you give Jasco for this? Do you think this year?
I'd give them an A. Yeah.
All right, Tim. Why don't you wrap up this category?
Tim's grinning like an idiot. Hopefully, he gives him a bad grade. I hope he's going to tear them.
I'm always the mean one on these.
Oh, let's go. Let's go.
So 3 sets in a year is good. I think that's sort of your CCG. You want to release 3 sets in a year. I don't really have a problem with the small set.
Okay.
I think if the plan is to have 3 small sets and 1 big set a year, that makes sense. I hope that doesn't mean we only get 1 set of starters a year. I hope we still get like 2 sets of starters a year. I think that's probably a good number. And I think, like Rio said, with the matching character themes to what the characters do, I think they did a pretty good job. I think it's hard with Mortal Kombat, just because the characters' fighting styles aren't super distinct in that game. Like, there are some places where you can do the Goro thing, you can do the Quan Chi thing, but a lot of the other characters, you know, they all punch, kick, and throw some ranged attacks. You know, they have some different specials, but it's not like Soul Calibur where it's very obvious that Talim and Sungmina have different game plans, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that.
That makes sense.
But in terms of sort of leveraging and getting value out of their licenses, I think we have to mention, even though this wasn't really a this year thing, this was more of a previous year's thing, the gap between the announcement of Mortal Kombat and the actual release of it.
Yeah.
And the number of people that folk out there got interested in the game saying, like, hey, we're getting Mortal Kombat. And then it just didn't come until this summer. It was really... It gave up a lot of the value they could have gotten out of that license. Because the kinds of players that they could recruit were sort of shaved in half, right? Because,
for sure. You know, the passion and the energy of the broader community just kind of drained out because nothing was happening. And, you know, any Mortal Kombat players who might have wanted to pick up the game, you know, they might have heard about it when it got announced, but, you know, NetherRealm Studios isn't going to keep up posting, hey, wait for this UFS news for 3 years.
Yeah, and then in terms of sort of bringing out what the licenses are and sort of representing in the sets why people are fans of them, like the Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers, it kind of doesn't matter. They had the comics. The comics weren't wildly popular. It was kind of just like a way to make a UFS set for them and to get, you know, bring Lilith back, bring Morgan back, etc. and I think it was really cool for that. Mortal Kombat, I'm not too familiar with the lore, but it seems like they did fine. It looks like all the characters' backgrounds got pretty well represented. But on Bebop, and this was talked about a little bit at the time, but most of the conversation was about, the power level increases and all of that. They really missed a lot when it comes to the Cowboy Bebop cards. Gateway Shuffle was the name of, I think that was the name of Twinkle Murdoch's episode, and it's a Fae card. I know there's some complaints about the treatment of Fae. At the very least, I would have expected a card name or anything at all referencing Speak Like a Child, or any of her backstory. It's almost like they watched the first half of the show and then skipped to the last 2 episodes. That's really kind of what it feels like when you look at the set. Because there's almost nothing about Faye's background. There's very little about Jet's.
I think they do have some cards that are like they reference the mid-season finale fight between Spike and Vicious. So you have to at least watch that much too.
Like Jet's background is one of his attack. They chose the art for one of his attacks. Where that's from that episode. That's it. There's definitely some stuff they left open, and I'm like, man, I don't want to.
It was almost like
they could have just chosen the cards better. The stuff better. That's all I can really say.
Yeah. It kind of feels like they weren't trying to look at what would fans of this property want to see. And I'm not like a big Cowboy Bebop fan by any means, but I've seen the show. But I watched it when they announced it for UFS. I'm like, okay, I got to find out what this is. And I was definitely surprised to see the kinds of things they chose to include over the kinds of things they didn't.
Rio, what do you think?
I was just going to say that with regards to what we were saying about the Cowboy Bebop cards, that we actually got flavor text on Bang, didn't we? We got I think it was some kind of end quote. I haven't actually seen the series. But,
see you, Space Cowboy, I think, right?
Yeah, that's why I said they must have watched the last couple episodes. But
right.
Yeah, I think I definitely want to chime in a little bit on Tim's point here. I think, and I hope that they kind of fill in some of these gaps with the DLC packs, because I think there are a lot of characters who were left out that I think may have been better choices. Azimuth and Katarina were in the first episode, but one of my favorite episodes is the one with Andy in it. So I think I would have much rather had Andy than Azimuth.
I was so expecting Andy to be a box topper. I was so ready for oh yeah, Andy's a box topper. That has to be it. I'm like, nope. And I'm like, it sounded like it was such a good sell too. Like you could put him in there.
Yeah, and I mean they were restricted by what things they could find justifiable attack art for, and so I get that.
Yeah.
I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on a related point, we haven't seen the DLC yet. We haven't got anything like that this year. The promos have just been reprints of old cards, and I think that's a missed opportunity to leverage your licenses. They've said this themselves. You can only release one license every so many months, and you have all these licenses, so it'll be good for them to scatter in promos of the other licenses to keep those fans sort of fed.
Yeah.
Here's the Cowboy Bebop DLC with Cowboy Andy, and some Julia promos or whatever.
Yeah, and I think overall promos have been, and they for a long time have been fairly lackluster. It's been a long time since Jasco Games actually printed a new promo that wasn't a reprint or an MRP or even a preview card. But we haven't gotten anything like, hey, here's your monthly prize support, and here's some cards that you haven't seen before, and this is how you get them.
That feels like an incredible segue into talking about Jasco's PR this year, about communications and all that stuff. Before we get that, Tim, what's your letter grade on collectability this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the C. I think they met expectations, and they did pretty good in a number of ways, and they missed the mark in some ways. So I'm going to call that a C.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable, I think. All right, so who wants to take the ball first on PR? Communications, Jasco Games.
Oh, not me. Don't choose me.
We're not going to play experience next.
I think Kevin, the commissioner, decided to go to PR next.
Okay.
Yeah, that was such a wonderful segue talking about
All
promos,
right.
but Sean doesn't want to continue. Jesse, talk to us about promos.
All right.
Talk to us about Jasco Games.
Jasco Games this year. I think this year we saw once again a lot of communication changes for the better. The addition of Sean Kennedy to the team and helping to get the scout system back on its feet, and also wanting to actively make sure information's being updated publicly on social media, specifically on top of actually updating the website with that same information as it becomes available, was a big change. PR wise, I mean, they kind of skated some things that they definitely decided to wait. They made a decision too late, or they made decisions at the right time. That's very pertaining to bans. Like they knew going into U.S. Nationals they had to ban Quan Chi, or it was just going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
But they didn't. Maybe they didn't evaluate the other aspects of, well, if we lock away this monster, what's the other monster in the room that's going to come behind it? And on this, I don't know. I think that they did. There's a lot of things I felt like they stayed the course from the year prior, though. Also, where we got the Jawfist. The Jawfist was pretty much UFS, the update show, because, well, that's what most of it was ever. But I don't know. I feel like everything was at least more accessible. When we needed information, they got it to us. When they had it, they just didn't sit there behind it, or they found a great way to announce a new license with Soul Calibur. They're like,
that was really cool. Yeah.
That was like, what's in the bot? Like playing the What's in the Box game to announce your license. That was great. Whatever one of them decided, hey, we got that sleeve deal working on. Let's play What's in the Box at U.S. Nationals. Like, that was fun. That was a great idea. That was awesome. But I really I could ramble on because I really don't have a fresh thought out, cut through idea. I'm gonna give them a B. We're better. We're going forward from last year, and we're gonna see what the next year brings. Like, it seems like things are on the up. They definitely did better than the C.
But there's still plenty of room for improvement in the future.
There's still plenty of room for improvement. Yes.
All right, great. Somebody go next. I don't want to just call it before you guys talk. Cool.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to go with around a B, and that's kind of just because it's a full year grade, and the start of the year I think was kind of like a C or a D, and the end of the year, right now they're probably at like an A or an A minus. My one big gripe right now is it would be nice if they would have some written notes on the Jawfist, the same usual complaints. If there's anything important that gets announced in the Jawfist, there should be some written accompaniment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, they haven't announced the next set yet. It would be nice if they announce what the next set's going to be. I worry. I want to say I'm sure that they're announcing it as soon as they know, but they should also know more than 5 weeks before their announced date.
Yeah. That's supposed to come out February 1st. There's a PTC that happens right after on the release.
Yeah, and that means
weekend.
the pre-release is supposed to be the week before February 1st.
And nobody knows what the license is.
Yeah, and some people say, like, in passing, JT said they should announce it, right? If you have something to announce it. So, I don't know. Maybe those gripes mean it's not really an A, but in any event, the beginning of the year was still... that was bad. You have to remember, we had the episodes in the beginning of the year where Jason came out singing about how fine the meta was, and then banned a card 3 days later.
Thank you for reminding me, because that had completely slipped my mind.
Oh, I plan to talk about that in my turn, so Tim beat me to it.
Yeah, there were also they tried to tell people for a little while that the only thing that got everything about the Cowboy Bebop power level increase was not handled well. Pretty much no part of that was handled very well, and for a while they were trying to tell people that characters were the only thing that got stronger, and then they backed off of that and said, like, okay, it's just characters and ultra rares, which is almost defensible. But yeah, so just because of how messy the first third of the year or so was, I'm going to go with a B, but I feel a little bit better about it now.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I've frequently said, like, wow, like I know I had like that we had like UFS had its best week ever, I think, leading up to Nationals somewhere in there, because there were just multiple consecutive positive announcements. Yeah, Sean or Ryu, who wants to go next? Do you wanna?
Rio, you take it, man.
Yeah, Sean's stealing the last word on this topic.
I think that. Well, I guess I should go with a grade first. Then I would also say a B. I think that it was a really big thing that Jessica Games came out to UK Nationals. That was, that in itself was enough for a lot of people to come out of the shadows and come over to UK Nationals and join in. And it was really nice to meet everyone and to see them handle everything. And the tournament itself went really smoothly as a result of it. And they were able to bring over nice prize support and playmats and everything. It was really good for us. We really appreciated that. And Shane and JT were awesome. Getting to meet them, I never thought I'd be able to meet them. Being able to meet them was really important to me, at least. Was Premier Store events, did they start this year? Or have they been going to 28?
No, that's new. Yep.
Yeah. They're also picking up interest. I've been really trying to push on that store to become a Premier Store. But I know that Max XP, I think that's what it's called, Games, Max XP Games up north. They've been hosting their Premier Stores, getting interest in them. And Sheffield have their own as well. Richard Basendale really dominated a few of them. And it's just really cool to hear about other tournaments other than UK Nationals, because that's all we had for a while. And now with both Premier Stores and the UK Cup, it's nicer for us. Fam coming back to Jessica Games, and the reason why he's important and relevant to this topic is because I've seen him have community discussions with us. Like every now and again, he'll just come in and he will say, "What do you think about the meta? How you feel about the game and everything?" And he'll actually take the time to listen to us, and that actually means a lot to me. And I'm sure it does to a lot of people as well, because I feel like we had a long session where we talked to him about that.
Yeah, Fam is once again the golden boy. He was the golden boy of 2017. I remember from last year's year in review, and yeah, it's great news to have him back again, and only going to see good things from him in the future too.
Yeah, and I believe the last thing I was going to say, I believe they reached out to the community about Quan Chi. I think I heard from Chris Smith that they talked to a bunch of people, and reached out to the community to ask them what they felt about it, rather than just doing it willy-nilly. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the idea, I know one thing that's one of my strong memories of this year is that at U.S. Nationals, after they had banned Quan Chi and, according to some reports, ruined the tournament with Liu Kang ruined the tournament now, they had a lot of they were very candid about soliciting feedback, saying, what do you think about what happened this weekend? What, even talking about how they wanted to open suggestions on how to change him. For all that we haven't seen that, or how to fix the problem. Do we ban Liu Kang? Do we ban Yin Yang? That kind of conversation.
I think there's a noticeable correlation between when they decided to start sending Shane out to every event, and Luke starting to hop in the Discord and hang out there versus the way they behaved before that. I feel like that's probably related to how things started improving. They started to sort of take more of the line of yeah, these are players that are playing our game and enjoying our game, but they have some things they think could be better once in a while, and that doesn't mean that they're toxic and they hate us or anything like that.
Alrighty.
Yeah, so, Sean, take over. Take this positivity joyride here.
Well, I think
drive it where you will.
When it comes to public relations and communications, this year was a real roller coaster ride. And I know this kind of comes into a little bit about play experience, but I remember, the start of this year, I remember myself personally being very disappointed that, after many years of hosting a PTC, We didn't get one, and they had these criteria that they hadn't told any of the stores about, and then we went to Guelph. And it was not a terribly great event. The stuff that was going on was not well communicated. 2 Canadians showed up, but we all got on with life. And I think we did have a good time at that event. And then I had Twinkle Murdoch. I had a deck that I really, really liked, that I thought was super duper fair because I didn't play the broken version. They told me I couldn't do something. I said I can. And they sang a song about how wonderful the meta was. I remember sitting on the beach in San Francisco listening to it. And I'm like, oh, cool. They didn't ban my character. I can go to the Reno local event this weekend at Gamma and play Twinkle Murdoch. And then 2 days later, she was banned. And I can't imagine, in 2 days, they just did a complete reversal there. And I think the way they handled that whole Cowboy Bebop increase in power level, where they kind of just put their heads in the sand and said everything's fine, and then they got mad at us because we kept calling it power creep cash grab, which I don't care what anybody says, it was exactly that. They are a game company, they are trying to make money, so they made cards that would appeal to people to be a for-profit business. And what's an easy way to make cards worth more money? Make them better. I bet you Tim Keefe and I would have sold a lot more cards from the sets that we designed if we just just went crazy and just didn't think about balance at all compared to what else was in the meta at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, in fairness, we did back then go out of our way to make sure there would be some high demand ultra rares and stuff, or at least cards that we thought would be, and we were wrong sometimes.
You were wrong a lot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example.
I mean, we thought Ominous Whistle was going to be the craziest thing.
Yeah,
since...
we thought Saranagiri would be hotter than it was. Stuff like that. But Cowboy Bebop was sort of just a whole set of it.
I mean, and that's kind of blurring the lines into play experience, but just the way it was handled when, there are folks who are upset because, their play style was completely nullified by what was going on. I mean, I sure feel bad for anybody who tried to play 5 hand size that wasn't busted after Bang came out. Like how do you even play that? And
you don't.
You do. You just stare that guy straight in the face and be like, "You have 4 bangs. Good luck."
You play Goro where Bang can't interact with him.
Yeah,
I played Guts now with a straight face at Worlds, man, and I got banged a lot, and I didn't give a care.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of salt, and I don't think there was terribly much understanding from the company. When people were saying all these cards are super powerful, they're super broken, and they came out and said, "Oh, the meta is fine. Here's some 4-check cards that aren't very good that might help you out of a small hole."
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, that particular episode of The Office has left me pretty salty now that I'm thinking about it again.
Especially if you're someone who played them cards already.
What was that?
Especially if you're someone who played them cards already and still got blown up.
Yeah, it didn't matter if you ran Sweet Nothings. You were still going to lose to Destruction. Like I said, it was a roller coaster. There were some good things going on at the time. Fam had his thing where he was posting about rules questions, and that was kind of cool. And then Fam was all of a sudden no longer with the company with not really any explanation. I understand you sometimes can't talk about those things. And then there was a lead up to Worlds where we knew there'd be some promos, and then we didn't really know what the prizes were.
Yeah. Right.
And I feel like if you're getting ready for your premier event of the year, you should be able to walk in the door knowing exactly what you're going to get. If you come in first place, if you come in 90th place. I know something that had, and this is just me being an entitled toxic player, but I didn't particularly want to play in singles at that event, and I remember asking a Jasco Games employee, like, "Ooh, is there going to be packs of Mortal Kombat, if you stick around all day?" And they said, "Oh, maybe. Anything's possible." And I felt a little misled by that, so that's also left me a little salty this year.
The words "anything possible" maybe should not be said when you're talking about prize support for an event. That is why U.S. Nationals was so well received. They announced everything ahead of time, and people were happy with that. They have learned from that. People were not happy at Worlds. Be like, well, you're not telling us what we're getting, so why should we be here?
Right. And that it kind of the year for me. Tim thinks things were better at the beginning of the year. I thought the beginning of the year was actually the low point.
No, I said the reverse.
Oh, okay,
The
okay.
beginning of the year was terrible,
Yeah.
and things are better now than they were.
And then for Nationals, like we were right up on the upswing. Sean Canada was back. We were getting regular episodes of the Jawfist that weren't just we're working on things. Maybe something will come out someday. You know, we knew what we
Yeah, a
were
lot more
getting.
specific details.
They were going to tell us about a new set release, and we knew that going into Nationals. And you know, they had the premiere store events running really well. You knew what the prizes were going to be every month. You knew what cards were coming out every month. And I feel like right around October was the pinnacle, and now we're sliding back again. We did get our PTC schedule pretty early this year, which was nice, so that we can plan travel and whatnot. But we have no idea what's coming up next for the premiere stores. We don't know what the next set's going to be. We don't know when the DLC packs are coming out. And as a retailer, that's really difficult for me. Talking to stores, talking to players, because they have questions that they expect their friendly local game store to be able to answer. And you can't. And it's really hard to get people who aren't diehard, engaged fans to care when your main source of knowledge is the game store and they don't know anything. So after all of that, I know I kind of drove all around the country there. I'm actually going to give them a D.
A D overall?
A D overall. I don't think... After the end of last year, my expectations were a little higher. And this year, there's just... While there were lots of good things, there are so many things that still just don't meet my expectations.
Yeah, you can't have someone walk up to their game store guy and say, like, hey, when's the next set come out? Oh, February 1st. What is it? I don't know. How do we know what's coming out February 1st? They put some German word on their website. We have February 1st next to it.
Well, I feel like most as a retailer, most game stores, most distributors are sending out solicitations right now for products releasing in February, March, April. And they can't put a solicitation out right now. We don't know what the license is.
Yeah.
So Southern Hobby's not knocking down my door saying, hey, you know, give me Jasco, tell me what you want for your Jasco pre-order, because it hasn't been announced.
All right. I think that's a good last word on on communications. Let's get to the really elephant in the room. I don't know who wants to talk first about the play experience in 2018 of playing UFS, being all that stuff.
Let's go with Rio. He's got some notes about this. He's got something to say.
Yeah, I got notes.
Talk to me about Bang Rio.
It was rough. Yeah. When you trade off so much for such strong effects, and you give all of this up for that to be taken away, and especially when there's no abilities, like when your opponent, well, there wasn't at the time, there is one card now, but when your opponent seals your card in your stage area, there's no protection for that, so it just happened. And then it was really tough with that. I think it's a lot better now, but on the same note, as much as Johnny Cage, that was when it really dawned on me, when I got pinged a lot when Johnny Cage got spoiled, because he has, he's the ideal character for me. He's got all three of my symbols. He plays the exact same way I want him to, but because on the back of Bang, I can't realistically take him seriously. I don't want to play that deck. And along with Bang came what I call weed whackers, missile launcher, coffee sander, allurophobia. All of these can just, 2-3 shot you. They enable such strong aggressive options that now you're paying these cards in hand, you're throwing them away for these strong effects and your health, but none of it really matters. Or it didn't then. I mean, at UK Nationals I played as Goro, and I just managed to stop some of the decks from firing off because I had to get 3 or 4 sometimes Shogun prints out, and that speaks volumes about how strong aggressive options are against 5-hand size and low hand size. It's really tough. What else have I got down here? Yeah, I mean, That's what Bebop did. When Bebop came out, no one wanted to play competitive yet. It's something that we just didn't want to do. It warped everything. But it feels like Mortal Kombat hosts fans of Mortal Kombat now. It feels like it's sort of a bit smoother, I'd say, with like Fade and Princess Parry. It's alright with some of the defensive options they allowed. And with Mortal Kombat, Anakaris came about.
That's that my snacky boy!
Yeah, that in itself was a player experience. And one that I am not fond of. If you talk to Big Dan about that, I'm sure he'd tell you. Anakaris was really left wing. And it was important for us to see that defensive decks could hang right now, even if they were, 4 to 7 attacks and mill strat. It's taken 2 PTPs, right? Something like that. 2 PTPs. The gravity of deadlock. That's the last thing I'm going to talk about.
That's a great topic.
Yeah. So now it feels like deadlock is no man's land. You go into deadlock, it's so tough right now, and I feel like a lot of my deck building space is also built around being able to weave deadlock. So once you go into deadlock, you can go back out and stuff like that. I think destruction for your own boarding, so that you can, you don't get pushed into it. And it's really rough being in deadlock, especially with like overly dramatic and missile launchers and these kind of cards going off. You can't really have them. You just get sunk at that point. And I'm sure Garrett Brett. I was talking to Devin the other day. He said that Garrett Brett says deadlock is killed competitive UFS. I'm sure it has for him.
Well, he likes to play like 30 foundations a game, so
I'm not sure what you guys think about deadlock. That's pretty much my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good, let's just talk about deadlock. I mean, we don't have to strictly go person by person getting the entire everything that's happened this year, because a lot has happened this year.
Yeah, so I personally pin most of it on overly dramatic, actually. I think when you look at the rest of the deadlock effects, they, by and large, even missile launcher, they sort of try to catch up to your large board.
Okay.
And by extension, your even larger board can sort of catch up past them. For the most part. Like, obviously, triple missile launcher's a different story. But overly dramatic's what gets you triple missile launcher.
Yeah, and literally on the back of overly dramatic, I was running 2 fatality in my Goro so that I could get this deadlock effect and my opponent couldn't do anything about it. Like, it speaks for itself.
I mean, my problem with deadlock, and I know I've told this analogy before, is, it's like a large pizza. I love pizza. I could eat a large pizza every day, but if I do it every day, I'm going to die. And I feel like, in Blood Omen and in Street Fighter, there was, a fairly reasonable amount of use of deadlock. I mean, there are times where it could really get you, and there are times it's like, well, whatever, I'll just build my wall 10 feet taller. And then they started printing cards that say, well, if I go into deadlock, I get any attack I want. If you go into deadlock and you're in desperation, you lose. If you go into deadlock and you have 3 vitality, you lose.
See, I think what's really interesting is that in the cards in Blood Omen, when they had a good deadlock effect, that was the exclusion of anything else really particularly compelling about them. Like the one Sasha Ultra Rare, that's like deadlock, go get any attack plus your next check, but it's a really mediocre combo with the 2 check. So no one plays those cards.
Mediocre combo, it destroyed any card.
Yeah, but it's a very hard combo condition. That's what I mean.
I know. Yeah, its combo condition is Fury, which my opinion about Fury, it's gonna get better because they're gonna keep printing Fury.
Yeah,
but just looking at at some deadlock cards like Dark Chirito, if you have the misfortune of being in deadlock, you die. They're unblockable and you already can't reduce the damage of the attack. You die. I bitched enough about fatality that says you die. I feel like
I've still never seen anyone actually die to that.
Hammerhead assault?
I had to play around it. Me and Kyrie Kyrie Tyler last round of Nationals, but our third game revolved entirely around Fatality. It was pretty funny. I was like I'm Kotal Khan, so I'm cutting myself, but trying to stay above desperation, but wanting to be in desperation and then gain life back.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the thing with Deadlock to me is that there are so many cards. I think the biggest problem with Over the Dramatic is that it's a card you're happy to play 4 of in the first place, and it has one of the most powerful Deadlock effects. And that's what we didn't see in Blood Omen and Street Fighter, is now we're seeing staple caliber cards that also have these insane Deadlock abilities. And so what ends up happening is that you build your deck kind of just assuming you'll have Deadlock cards in it, and then if your opponent happens to play in a way to be into Deadlock, now you get your power up. But if they don't, you're still happy to play your Fatality as Graveyard Hate and Fast Momentum, and not even caring about the win condition.
Yeah, and Overdramatic is one of the Deadlock effects. I'm trying to think if there's others. It, instead of catching up to your opponent's board, it rewards you for having a big board, because you can pass all those things you're grabbing. And it's just the wrong dynamic, right? You're trying to punish big boards, not reward people for building their big board and then staring at the Cassie Cage on the other side of the table who can't leave 10.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the most annoying thing about Deadlock is there's very powerful Deadlock effects sprinkled in, and there are a lot that may not directly say you lose the game, but they effectively do say that. And then you have to stop at the end of every turn and be like, hold on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, shit, I'm at 10. How do I destroy a foundation before I get the big shaft for having 11 foundations?
Yeah.
Or do I just have to... Sorry. It's like, do I just have to sit here and play Magic and draw 1 card a turn because I can't play Foundations? That game's not fun.
I think it's an interesting kind of layer of deck building. Actually, one thing that occurred to me earlier was that so Rio, you play a lot of lower hand size characters. Those characters are, I think, proportionally less affected by Deadlock. You play a 7 hand size character. It used to be you'd play 5 Foundations on turn 1, 5 Foundations on turn 2, and they'd be Foundations with defensive effects. You'd build up this huge board, and then you just keep firing on all cylinders, building out this huge staging area as the game went on. If your opponent wasn't going to beat you to death to punish you for that, and a 5 hand size character could never do that, right? For a lot of reasons. Do you think that Deadlock kind of the threat of it affects your opponents more, and that's an advantage to 5-handers?
1,000,000%. I think that Deadlock affects my opponent beyond. Right. So for reference, the person Scott Berry, I think that's how you say his name. He fought me in the finals of teams, and he was at a board state where he was at 10 Foundations, and he had passed as his first form the previous turn, so he now has to play a card. And he sat on 4 Shogun Prints, and he doesn't want to enter Deadlock because of my overly dramatic and my missile launchers in my bin. And he sat there for 20 minutes trying to work out what to do. Me and Kevin were there. He'll tell you himself. He was sat there looking around at the other players what do I do? And he was just telling me as well. I'm like, I can't help you. I mean, if you go into Deadlock, if you play Foundation, you'll probably die. If you play an attack, I'll vaccine you. It's just so influential, Deadlock, right now. I feel like it is.
Yeah, that was fun to report on for the Discord. I'm just like, yeah, this is pretty much over, but it might take another half hour to an hour or so. It's like Rio's just waiting for this sleeper hold to do its work here.
I felt really bad for him because he just looked really stuck. But he says he's gonna, he said he's gonna bring it back to me. He's gonna get his revenge next time. So maybe he'll have me at 10 Foundations, and I won't want to go into Deadlock.
It was a couple weeks ago. I was playing against Ryan Field, who likes to copy everything with his technical spheres because that's what cool kids do these days.
Yep.
And I was in a bad spot because I was in desperation. I had no way out of it, and I had a handful of Foundations, and I knew he had a Fatality in his hand and a Fatality in his removed from game pile. And it was, well, I could concede because I've already passed, or I can play a Foundation and lose. And there's so many no-win scenarios in UFS as it is. Somebody gets a really good draw, your deck's not powerful enough, you weren't adequately prepared, you didn't know your meta. But then actually sitting there and saying, yeah, while they don't have a way to actually kill you, if you do anything, you just lose. And if you do nothing, you have to concede. And I don't know, that's just a really shitty spot to be in.
Yeah, it felt really awful just seeing it happen to him. Because all of the plays that everyone could have made, and then it came down to that.
Yeah. Jesse, do you have any thoughts you want to share, or should we move on to the next topic?
What, play experience? Is that what we've been talking about, or are we like?
Well, yeah, but also
we started on play
we
experience.
took a foray.
Yeah, we
took
a detour down Deadlock Street.
Yeah, I think that's a component of Deadlocks. A component of the play experience this year, and that's a big topic. It's been discussed a lot, and I figured we could touch on it in the year in review.
I mean, Deadlock was what it. I'm not a player of Deadlock. Like I will. If a card has, I never play a card expecting I'm gonna get this Deadlock ability off a lot.
Yeah.
That's never how I play a card. But when you start mixing really good abilities and then you slap a Deadlock ability on it, yeah, you're gonna get that card's gonna get its value for you, and Overly Dramatic was definitely a well choice of it. I mean, I played some weird stuff at big events this year where I missile launched. I definitely had to at U.S. Nationals do Deadlock missile launcher to kill somebody. And it was like, okay, we're going there. Can you survive my stuff? I'm gonna go copy Samba missile launcher, and here's 4 momentum. I'm gonna use for cost for those pumped up abilities. Good luck.
Well, I like a Deadlock card like missile launcher because it says, "Oh, you built your wall 10 feet taller." Well, I'm gonna go 10 feet over that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna build a 20-foot ladder. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hammerhead assault. Being able to tuck 2 under.
Yeah, Hammerhead. That card's so underrated.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. I mean, I think as far as somebody who has played cards with Deadlock abilities, it is nice to put that on the field if you're playing a passive deck like a Nacros that says, well, hold on, you can't actually do whatever you want. Like, bad things are going to happen to you. So I think... to Rio's point a little earlier, Deadlock has been really helpful for those more passive decks that can deal with Deadlock being played against them, but can also find a way to keep themselves out of Deadlock and play that 9-10-11, 10-9, 10-11 game.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of really interesting variants in some of these games. I remember one of the feature matches from the Precaution VCTC stands out to me, where in one game, I think it was a Nacros against Vega, Vega had built triple or quad face of a monster, and now a Nacros had to strictly had to play at 10 foundations. Could not ever go over, or he would get his entire hand discarded instantly, and he would be helpless. And in the next game, a Nacros had multiple copies of Manipulative and Deceitful, Quan Chi's Deadlock card, that would mill out Vega almost instantly if he were to go into Deadlock. And the Vega player had no face of monsters. So he had no Deadlock threats at all. And so now, in the course of a 3-game set, they played one game where one player was stuck at 10, one game where the other player was stuck at 10, and then I think they actually only played 2 games. I don't quite remember.
Well, if it was a Nacros versus Vega, they probably only played a game and a half.
Yeah.
I really like Up in Smoke as an example of it. As an example of a Deadlock card that's really good for Deadlock. Because once they go over, then you can get to pick and choose what they use.
Yeah, cards. I think up to Tim's point earlier about cards that are tools to break down walls versus tools that are tools to exploit walls. Cards like Up in Smoke or Twinkle's Foundation.
Unmet
Demands. Yeah, it's like when you have that online, it's like, okay, I'm actually gonna be able to fight back against someone who just wants to play 12 million control pieces, and this is cool. But it's definitely a balancing act to still make the game fun. I'll pitch back to you guys. Under the topic of play experience, you want to just try to take a big shot at everything as a whole, talk to tournament play or something, or what do you like?
I think there are the 2 sort of other elephants on this topic. There were 3 bans, right? There were 3 characters that had to be banned.
Yep.
Banned at 3 separate times. So, to an extent, any tournament that happened while those characters were legal was going to be subpar by definition in some form or another. That's been true for most major events in the game's lifetime, though, so I don't really know how we're judging that exactly. Right, most majors have had some sort of something that's gotten banned, if not immediately afterwards, then not too far down the road.
Well, there's always a next monster up, right, after something gets banned.
Yeah, but they've also historically, until Quan Chi, I said this when they banned Quan Chi, they had historically just let things like Angels, even though they knew they were problems, just ride, through the next major because they didn't want to mess with it. And the other thing that was a big deal this year was partially because of the power level increase, and partially I think sort of just because of the design of the sets even after Mortal Kombat. Diversity was a bit more of an issue than it has been in previous years. Obviously, when Bebop was legal, those 8 characters were seen as above the rest of them. Yeah. And even Mortal Kombat came out. I think one of the things that was more true before this year was that the good stuff, there was some number of good stuff decks where, like, you could take any reasonable character on the air symbol or something, or pick whatever symbol at the time, and make something work with them. And now, because these more powerful cards are also more linear for the most part, it's a little bit harder to do that. Like, even in Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers, right? You want to use Thundering Impact, you better have a character with a speed bonus. So we've yet to hear anything. I guess this is kind of under communication we talk about. There was a lot of sort of fervor after Nats about taking a look at the way they're running their tournaments with diversity and some of the other rules that they have. And we never got any sort of response or comment on that. And that's kind of bizarre for something that was talked about so much. But aside from those two things, I think the game on the table's been pretty good, all things considered. Maybe not the best it's ever been, but I think for all that people complain about turn 2 blowups and stuff, there's been less of that than there have been at points in the past. And maybe there's more than there was at, 17 Nats or whatever. But, I think back to, like, the Mitsurugi decks and, I'm trying to think, stuff like Mitsurugi that wasn't banned, right? Some of the throw decks over the years that could actually turn to you.
Even just like Shield Ram aggro, I think that it's widely considered to be a pretty fair deck in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and I mean, so I don't think I think it's just it sticks in your head more, especially when it happens with like a pile of new cards that's mostly a character plus their support, all working together. It feels more like you want to blame the game for it happening. But I don't think on a frequency basis it's really that much more common.
I kind of wonder if this is an idea that just occurred to me now, and then I just want to bounce it off you guys. Do you think that it might be because of the increase, and they increased the power level clearly, and a lot of cards like might look good like in a complete vacuum, and you're like, wow, I could just be like build a good stuff deck around this card, like I build a good stuff deck around Gateway Shuffle or something, or just Most Trusted Assassin, and then you play against a deck that is actually in line with sort of one of these linear themes, and you're just surprised because you thought your deck was full of great cards, and it's just getting crushed by this much more synergistic pile of stuff. And we said that the games at the top tables, or the games over the board, are very interesting when you're clashing two of these like pretty well built, tuned, maybe like synergistic decks together. But there might be. Do you feel like there might be more just like one-sided beatdowns when someone shows up with something that's just not up to snuff?
So one of the things that I've been thinking about lately, and this will come back to your question, I promise, at the end, is the other day Kevin and I were talking about how good the meta was back in the day. And I talk about how I love Tim Keefe UFS, where we just played Shoryudans into each other all day, every day, and then like on turn 7, somebody won. And Kevin's like, well, wasn't Angels legal while we were doing that? I'm like, oh, yeah. Then they banned them. And he's like, well, then Chin was legal. And then Iori was legal. And basically he took my perfect 1950s version of UFS, where everything was black and white and everyone was happy, and reminded me of all the bad things that were actually happening at the time. And so I think right now I get so salty because, my play style, and maybe Rio could agree to this a little bit, is not terribly strong right now. And it's like, oh, I miss these days. Like, no, it was really shitty back then too. You're just salty because it's happening right now. And back to Kevin's question, I think back in the days when the power levels of the cards were a little lower, except for some outliers, which of course had to be dealt with. I definitely think UFS these days is more punishing if you show up to your local event or you go to some sort of PTC where you haven't fine-tuned and tested and built this deck that's really synergistic, and you just show up and you just get soul crushed because you can't deal with a 45 damage turn 2 from Akuma. You're just not prepared for it. You don't have any outs to it because you weren't prepared. And I think some of those matches are a little more soul crushing than they used to be, because at least it took me till turn 5 or 6 to lose that way back in the old days.
No, now you just die on 2, Sean.
Yeah,
because that's that's my decision for you to die on 2.
Yeah, and I think Garrett's commented on this on Facebook threads here and there, and I agree with it. And it definitely makes things a bit of a headache when you're trying to deck build, especially when you're trying to deck build around diversity and trying not to, play the same deck that your buddy's playing or whatever. One of the ideas with one of these good step decks, or really any deck that's trying to do anything besides crash your face in, and this is more true post Mortal Kombat than it even was when it was just Bebop, is that your goal on some levels to be prepared for whatever you might see. And the range of things that you might see that can blow you up if you're not ready there's a much longer list now than there probably ever has been. And
absolutely.
We saw, and at Nats, what we saw is the Cassie Cage, who was probably number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on people's lists of things they wanted to be ready for, was able to take advantage of that, because you have to be ready for Liu Kang. You have to be ready for Jackie Briggs. And then here comes speed and damage.
Here comes speed and damage. Speed and damage was how you got, that's what I did all weekend. I'm like, speed and damage.
Well, I talk about honest UFS with Kevin a lot. And Cassie Cage is an honest UFS deck. She plays honest UFS. She plays attacks. She puts speed and damage on them. You can't be more honest in UFS than that. Her gimmick, she's got a little bit of a gimmick, but it's just making your moves bigger.
Yeah, she's got a lot of fair incremental advantage stuff. She draws a bunch of cards. She makes the cards in her staging area better. It's a lot of very fair stuff. But yeah, she's also very, very strong, and she gets this great linear scaling mechanic as the game goes on. And actually, Tim, I want to focus on something you said, because I think that it's really interesting that you framed. So you made a statement that there are more things to prepare for than maybe in any metagame in the history of the game. It used to be you'd have to prepare for maybe an air control deck and a fire aggro deck, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kind of offbeat characters, maybe some Trinity guys, or someone's going to show up with Trinity guys this week.
Some asshole's going to show up with mono throws.
Yeah. Actually, throw decks have often been pretty good. And now there's this huge spectrum of 5,000 different, is Scorpion going to show up? Is anyone going to show up with Scorpion? I think there's been plenty of events where there's no Scorpions, that kind of stuff. Is someone going to show up with, is Sub-Zero actually any good? How do I beat, am I going to build a deck that's going to lose to Sub-Zero outright? And that was, that definitely makes it harder to build a deck from scratch or whatever, but it seems like that should be a high praise for a format, that there's such a wide range of options to do things.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's good and bad at the same time, right? Because for players like me and Garrett that are used to this, all right, if we go through this process of deck building and we just try to make sure we don't have any auto losses, we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's still that might be possible, but the number of decks that can do it is very, very small. And it's not strictly a bad thing, but it does mean that when you go to a tournament, the chances that you're going to run into something that just blows you up are higher. And the chances that you're going to feel like, oh, I lost at this event because such and such is stupid, or because, oh, my pairings were bad, or whatever, goes up. And so your likelihood of being satisfied with a given tournament is lower. Because you feel like, yeah, maybe I could have built my deck to be better against such and such, but then I would have lost to this other thing that's more popular that I didn't run into at all,
Yeah.
So it's harder to, if you don't do well at a tournament, it's harder to feel more like you own it. And that's not really me speaking personally, because I came back from Nationals, changed 6 decks in my Kodokan, and when you do that, you screwed up. If you come home, put your deck on that table, and change 6 cards as the first thing you do, you messed up, right? You needed to tune your deck more.
Yeah.
But you can see people's frustrations with oh, I just got blown up by this thing. and you can tell them, well, prepare for it better, but then they prepare for it and then they get blown up by something else.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you can't win.
Definitely. Well, one of the things we haven't talked about as far as gameplay goes and play experience, we've talked a lot about the cards, but I kind of want to talk a little bit about the actual playing UFS. One of the big things that we had a scout meeting recently. I don't think any of you were in that. And one of the things that Jasco's really pushing for 2019 that I'm incredibly excited about is UFS for casual players. Because UFS has been a really, really scary place for people who just want to play casually. I think all of us are going to kind of roll our eyes at this, having, been playing high-level UFS for a very, very long time. And I don't know if UFS can really be a casual game. It's not like a game where I can play a forest and play my Llanowar elves and have a good time beating people up with 1/1s, because that's just not how our game works. But back to play experience, this year I thought, aside from not having enough UFS being played, which there never is enough UFS being played, I think overall our tournament scene was pretty good. The first PTC of the year was super rough. 4 of us were there at the Guelph PTC by the pool, which then...
we have the top 4 on this stream.
We do.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rio, you're not part of this club. So it was definitely a major botch to start the year. I'm glad Fam was there. Fam's my hero who moved us out of the pool and to the bar. Playing UFS in the bar is always good. Tim Keefe, I remember, told me we were playing in the 2-0 round, and he goes, Sean, you're supposed to go 0-2 drunk, not 2-0 drunk, as I'm drinking my 32-ounce stein of cider. For the record, he did end up going on to beat me. But I think the tournaments themselves, how they were actually being run this year, was significantly improved. Worlds, I think, ran pretty smoothly, except stuff that was kind of beyond their control. Like, there was no Wi-Fi available, so there was no streaming. That's not their fault. They set up the wrong tables. Not really their fault. Like, I feel like the only really bad thing to happen at Worlds this year was the bingo tournament. My beautiful wife, Christine, was in the bingo...
Wait a minute. How about when we showed up for Worlds for teams to start, and they put out the half-size tables?
I already said that's not their fault, though. That sucked. But
you can blame that on the venue staff, and then the venue staff promptly fixed it.
That was fixed pretty quick.
I'm sorry, I completely missed the not their fault response. I'm like,
So
I missed the line.
Back to the only downside to Worlds, definitely the bingo. When you get bingo, you expect to win a prize. You don't expect to go to sudden death bingo. Oh, we lost him.
We've moved from UFS to bingo.
No, all jokes aside, I'm over that. It's just funny to bring up because it makes Kevin and Jesse mad. Tournaments ran really well this year. It was awesome having a Jasco Games representative at every single major. I think because of that, there are no rules hiccups. There are no tournaments just imploding in on themselves. Things for the most part started on time. I think that was, really, really good. I think going to tournaments and having fun was better than it's been in a long time. The Premier Store events, getting local support back into stores, because that's where you make UFS players. You don't make UFS players at PTCs. You make UFS players at your friendly local game store coming in saying, oh man, I love Scorpion. When can I play Scorpion? I'm playing Scorpion until the day he rotates. If you have a Robot Masters event, I'm not showing up because I only play Scorpion.
The purely hypothetical chance that might be a person.
Yeah.
Did anyone get Decklist Era Doomed this year? Anyone?
At Worlds, no.
Yeah.
And at Nats, there was a game loss on teams. I think that was the better. But it wasn't the end all be all. It was something correctable. Like there was something weird about it. I can't remember. There was a game loss, but not a full year out of the tournament. situation occurred.
There were deckless disqualifications at least one of the PTCs, the Precaution PTC.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There was 2 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't Ryan Field disqualified because he didn't write down his deck correctly?
No, Ryan Field was.
He played.
No, Ryan played.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
We would have given him a lot more shit, Sean.
That's true.
We haven't made fun of him at all for that.
You're right. We only make fun of him for, buying cameras for the event and then returning them the next day.
Anyway.
You bring up the
that's,
DQs, Rio, and I think that's still a big opportunity for them to improve is getting disqualified for an accounting error, even though it didn't really happen that much this year, is still super shitty. But I'm not going to beat that horse anymore.
When it happened to me at 2017 UK Nats, they said that the people who were running the store said that other card games don't do it. They have some kind of system where they give the player a game loss into their next best 2 out of 3 or something like that. I'm not sure if that would work, but I feel like deck list disqualifications are, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been hit by it, but
I've been hit by it too. It sucks.
It's really ridiculously draconian. Yeah.
Especially when there's not intent.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that, like, players have been in near universal agreement about this for years, and I don't think Jesse's ever even defended it. Just say, like, well, get your deck list right. Well,
they have
we get that.
Defended it. I remember when they made this a rule. This was back in 2017. I sat with Miles, Jason, Shane, and Kevin was playing a match at the time, and we talked about it. And basically their justification of why it had to exist was because you should just get your deck list right.
Yeah.
Because we've never caught any cheaters. Like, we've disqualified somebody after the fact for out of nationals because they presented a deck with too many copies of a card in it. I think to this day that player did not cheat.
Yeah, I agree.
Turns out UFS is full of idiots. I'm an idiot. Kevin's an idiot. Jesse's an idiot. Tim, even you're an idiot. And I bet Sharia Gopal's an idiot too. We're excited to see all of our friends when we get to the tournament hall. We write down our list as quickly as possible so we can, go around and hug all of our friends and talk about how much Liu Kang sucks and he's the worst thing for the format. And Kevin likes to build his deck until there's a minute left in registration. We're just stupid people. We make mistakes and they're just like, well, you should just get your deck list right. It just seems like the most asinine justification.
I can see Nutcracker and Nutcracker happening. The 2 different. I can see that happening sometimes. But beyond that, I don't really know.
Yeah, and it's not like a game loss is a small penalty either. Like that feels really bad, but it feels a lot more appropriate than DQ.
Yeah, especially because the disqualification then starts screwing with the results. You start putting different people into top cuts, very arbitrarily, honestly.
Right. Yeah, and because I got DQ'd, I they're not allowed to give me prize support once I get DQ'd. After I'd made top cuts, and then they tell me that I get DQ'd, and then whoops, can I grab back that prize support? It's like,
being disqualified with no prize is a lot. Especially if you did run the gauntlet and you beat all the Liu Kangs that you had to get to elimination, and you traveled 1,200 miles or 1,200 kilometers if you're from England to this tournament, and it's like, wow, congratulations, you didn't play an illegal deck. The deck you presented was completely legal, but because you made an accounting error, goodbye, leave. You don't get to do anything else. Yeah. Not even like a pity prize. Not even like, you get a box of Tides of Vengeance starters as the booby prize because you had a deck list error. You just get out of here.
Right. So I think Tim's definitely right that I think the community as a whole has broadly been in agreement about this for a long time now. And in the interest of not beating dead horses anymore, do you guys have anything, do you think there's anything else to talk about as far as play experience goes this year? Or, because we talked about one of the biggest mechanical changes to the game as a whole, deadlock. We talked about some of the bans, some of the different formats we've had for tournaments, some of the tournament organization issues. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or do you want to just fire off your grades?
I want to talk about one last thing.
Yeah.
Intentional draws at the end of major events.
Yeah, this is a topic that definitely, it seems to me, is kind of front and center on the mind of Jaxco Games sometimes, and of the community as a whole. That some of their policies are aimed at addressing this in one way or another.
Yeah, one of the things, like the only good thing diversity has done, but it also skews us a little bit, is more people, when you have an 8-character format, have to play. Because they could be diversified, they can't slide in 4th or 5th place and get in because they happen to show up with Liu Kang or Spike or something that's really good. But on the flip side of that is, well, I'm going to get a Sunday. We talked about people getting scoop Sundays at Worlds. It's like, well, I got a 1 scoop, I got 2 scoop. It's like, well, 3 people scooped me and I got into elimination. That doesn't feel very good either. And I'd like to present for your review. For the first time ever, I'm announcing a suggestion to improve the intentional draw situation. You ready for this? I propose... Go ahead. What's up, Jesse?
All right, I want to hear your proposition is, and if it's the same as I've been trying to push for the last year, or if it's something else. Let's find out.
So one of the things I like about the National Football League is... if you are the highest seed in the playoffs, you get home field advantage. Means you're in your stadium with your fans cheering for you. I don't know if this is how it works in association football. I imagine it's this kind of the same thing. And you have a clear advantage. And I thought to myself, what is home field advantage in the universal fighting system? And that is choosing who goes first. So I'm putting it out here as a proposal for tournament play, for nationals and worlds, that we would reduce intentional draws if the higher seed player got to choose who goes first in elimination.
Now, you said nationals and worlds. Is there anything specific to the big major events that makes this suitable there but not anywhere else?
Not really.
I'll say this. This would be just to go in line with every other, any event in Magic over, I think it's over 500. That's how top 8 are played. Now it's, if you are the higher seed, you get choice. That is part one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Enacted that last year at their major events. Hearthstone is enacting it this year for their esports events that are of high caliber, especially for top finals. It's a lot. It's definitely a benefit. And I agree with it. I would love to see that as an option. If you want to play, you play good the whole game. You get that back end payout of I get to go first twice. I have that locked in my back pocket on the back end. I think that's great.
I think it would make the Swiss rounds a lot more competitive because each round's going to matter a whole lot more.
And I think the most important thing as far as Swiss goes is that you never... So there's a point, if you're an undefeated player, where you no longer have anything to play for. Or, I've been in the situation several times where I'm not in a diversity contest, and I effectively lock my seed much sooner than the conclusion of Swiss, because there are going to be diversities, and no one else is chasing me, so... the rank that the top, Felicia needs to hit is going to be a lot higher than the rank I need to hit. So I'm not competing with them anymore. I have nothing to play for.
Silly,
and this gives me something to keep playing for. I guess I'm translating myself back to 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would help with that, because I think there's a lot of people who get salty about, all the intentional draws and the elitism and whatnot at the end of...
There's a lot of issues with win trading, and there's a lot of things that make it less of a competition and more of a popularity contest.
Yeah. I will say, I think I've said this in a couple other contexts. I think, we have this thing. We have talks about diversity, double diversity, other alternatives. A few other topics, the DQ thing. I think, as just sort of as a PR strategy, you probably don't want to make these sorts of tournament structural changes as a slow drip, because, one thing, like, that's 4 or 5 separate points in time where you need people to be paying attention to, like, register, like, okay, this happened. 3 months later, okay, this happened. 2 months later, okay, this happened. And the other thing is then you're just inviting every suggestion under the sun, just constantly coming to you all the time, because every couple of months you've shown that you're willing to make changes.
And so you're saying it'd be better to kind of rip the Band-Aid off, make several big changes all at once.
Everything, just try to come up with everything that could be a topic. How much of an advantage is going first in the first place? Why don't we have the Turbo Mulligan in Standard yet? Or some, a similar equivalent. Not exactly Turbo Mulligan. Anything you might want to do diversity, anything you might want to do, otherwise, do you want to do wacky round counts? I've seen some Fantasy Flight games have diverted from the powers of 2 round counts. I know UFS has experimented with some things before, so they could look at that, defining when they're going to go to top 16. Do you want to come up with hard definitions for how many rounds you're going to do of top cuts after Swiss on the same day instead of, same night? Yeah.
Yeah. Does everyone want to keep playing?
Yeah, so, like, I feel like they should take some time, and this really is just something where, you set aside, a couple hours one night to have a team meeting or hit up some scouts or whatever. And then you say, okay, we're going to introduce some things, think about them. We'll come back a week later, we'll talk about them, and then JASCO will meet and come up with a decision, and it'll take, maybe a grand total of 4 or 6 hours of JASCO's time, and you write up the announcement, and then it's all done, and then all the content creators talk about it on their next shows, and it's a big deal, and everybody hears about it, and they talk about it again before the next major. And in theory, that you get the word out, you just have to do it once. You have to have, like, one big push, and then everybody knows, like, this is what they've done, and it doesn't look like you're just, like, constantly changing things.
Yeah.
I think the community would definitely be up for it. Definitely be up for testing some of them as well. And that's the big kick to it.
Yeah, because, like, we've been doing it for 10 years isn't a justification, right? That does not in any way mean that they couldn't possibly improve it, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, not every change is an improvement, but every improvement is always a change. Yeah. So you gotta start somewhere.
Alrighty,
All right,
so
great.
we're actually getting towards the end of our allotted time for our show for this evening. So I want to wrap it up, Commissioner, here.
Yeah, guys, it sounds like we've hit a lot of topics. You had one more to introduce at the end. I want to hear. So, Jesse, let's start with you because arbitrarily, what's your overall grade for play experience this year?
B+.
B plus.
B+.
Tim, what do you got? Because we've talked.
I'll go with B.
At this point. Rio.
I'm going to say B- as a player who plays
You've got this
low hand size. There's only think of the pool of characters you have options of. Like the UK Cup's coming up, and I'm not wanting to play Goro again. Not it's not as if I've soured off him or anything. It's just like I want to venture.
You want to mix it up, yeah.
And who else do I go to right now in this format? It's like, oh, okay. So yeah, B- I think is there.
Let me tell you about my friend Akuma.
Ooh, Akuma. What are you talking about your friend? He's my friend.
He's friends with anybody who touches him in his cards. Anyone who...
Just like a cat.
Oh, I love cats. My grade, I'm actually going to go with a C+.
C+, all right.
A C+. I think that, I'm one of those people who just won't ever be happy about UFS. I just like being sad and salty. I do want to go back, though, and change one of my previous grades. I would like to increase my communication from a D to a B-. And here's why. And we didn't talk about this at all. In the last round of spoilers, JASCO Games reached out to their content creators and said, hey, do you guys want to be part of this? Do you want to help us show this super awesome thing? And they even reached out, I believe, to one of the content creators across the pond in England.
Yep.
And I think that in itself, was a good PR opportunity to show Jasco that they appreciate the idiots like us who get on and talk good things and bad things about their game 2 hours a week. And that was just an awesome PR thing to do, and that's why that's going to earn them a letter grade and a half for me.
Yeah, that was huge. All right, guys. Great. Any last words before we wrap it up tonight? About UFS in 2018?
So good luck at the UK Cup, Rio.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be something.
Are you insinuating that you're going to play Bang?
Oh no! I mean, if there's something that wraps up 2018, I guess it's Bang, Fatality, and a bunch of
Rio, if you're
copy characters that are better that were better in their character than themselves.
Rio, if you're going to play in the UK Cup, and I think you and I have a kind of similar play style, I should introduce you to my Mr. Snacky Boy.
Oh my god.
I think you'd have a great time. You get to play Bang and Revoke and Templar, all my favorite blue cards. You get to play a bunch of green cards and a bunch of gray cards.
You're very hard to kill.
You don't get to play any throws, though. I know that's a little scary for you.
Wait. He could play negative stolen if he chose to.
If he wants
That's
to
a reasonable option. That's a reasonable option. It really is.
I need to work out something to play, but I'm definitely not going to play as Anakaris. I don't. He was a deck that a lot of people thought I was going to play, and
no one will be ready for him. He's like Asuka. No one is ready for Anakaris.
Big Dan will play Anakaris. I bet if someone's going to play Anakaris, it's going to be Big Dan. And he's getting sharp right now. He could definitely do it.
Diversify him.
Anakaris Diversity 2018. Oh, man.
So before we wrap it up, a little housekeeping to do for Rochester CCG, your number one source for all of your UFS needs. We are continuing to offer our holiday packs, where you can get 2 boxes from a set, plus the release mat, plus a copy of each of the full art characters that came out at that time. We've got Street Fighter all the way on up through the most recent set, Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers. So get those orders in, because once I run out of full art cards, they're done. I don't think not Shane, but I don't think Jason or Fam are going to print any more for me. Also remember our buy list. If you have old Power Creep Cash Grab you want to turn to new Power Creep Cash Grab that you want to turn into admissions fees is all of a sudden really good Power Creep Cash Grab, utilize our buy list. If you turn in your cards for credit, we give you 20% more in store credit. And if you are stateside and you need copies of whatever this guy's card was called, Death Charge, I think we still have some of those in stock.
I think I sent Sean 300 copies. I think that's what it was. And now there's only 7 left. So get them while you can. And I'm pretty sure that's the only place you can get them.
Outside of drive-thru, I think.
Yeah, outside of drive-thru. So they're looking pretty good in Lilith at the moment, or Morrigan, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, look good in Morrigan.
Yeah.
Kevin's card always looked terrible, so don't run any of them except Pulled My Trigger. That's the only one that's any good.
It comes with the prices pretty okay if you want a 5th copy of Dreaming of Becoming One.
Jesse.
I'm gonna end this with a prediction for 2019.
You don't make predictions, you make spoilers?
No spoilers, just prediction. Power creeping cashier grabs.
Power creeping cashier grabs.
That is my prediction.
An army of grocery store cashiers will take over UFS.
And on that very confusing note, it's time to end. Everybody, thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with our regular cast at our regular schmegular time. We thank you. And
oh man,
I thought Rio was. Oh, there's the muscle mountain. I thought he was taking off everything. This is a G-rated show. Thank you for watching. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.